So now I would like to introduce the panel for today. If you can please help me welcome Sven Darmani. He's a global supply chain leader in automotive sector. Sven, you want to come on up? Big welcome. I know it's early. Please also welcome Guillaume Quantin. He's a senior manager at Nissan North America. And we have Bill Wapler, who's the president and CEO of Surgair.
Good morning. It's such a pleasure to be here. So I'll kick off the panel with a little discussion around Industry 4.0 and what we see as the major trends, where we're seeing adoption, and how companies should think about proceeding with Industry 4.0. There you go. Oh. Excuse me. Thank you. So as we think about Industry 4.0, there are a lot of different forces shaping it. There's digital supply chain, there's Internet of Things, and as we just heard Daniel say, there's a lot of data and technology that underlies the Industry 4.0 enablement. And so what is Industry 4.0? This is the framework we use. We look at capabilities around improving your own logistics, capabilities around optimization of production, as well as management of your equipment, maintenance, and all the way down through customer. But what does that really mean? Let's talk about a few examples of these. When we look at optimization of logistics, think of using RFID technology for not just your inbound materials and tracking and tracing and optimizing your loops for recirculating returnables, but also think about how do you track the vehicles, the finished products, as they come out of the assembly line. In a lot of cases in cars, there is GPS and other data capabilities, but they are not usually enabled until the car is sold to the customer. So RFID technology can plug the gap and help track your products until they're actually put into use. Optimization of your own production. That's definitely an area where we're seeing the biggest enablement of Industry 4.0 in improving OEE, reducing bottlenecks, and improving throughput end to end. Another one which the industry started to use first for low value, low volume products was additive manufacturing. And it started with plastics and resins, and now it's moved on to metals. And the physical characteristics of the parts that are produced through additive manufacturing of metals are actually similar to cast. So it's evolving from low value to medium and high value. In fact, if you look at some other industries in aviation, there are parts of jet engines that are being produced with additive manufacturing. So a pretty cool utilization of Industry 4.0 capabilities. Another one which is really interesting and has a huge impact on the productivity and the end-to-end supply chain is utilizing the IoT for service and parts and maintenance of your equipment. I'll give you a really interesting example that I came across the other day. At one of the manufacturing sites, a pretty large motor with a bearing about this big was showing high temperature on one side and a regular temperature on the other side. So the service team thought it's probably a bad bearing, and they went to investigate, didn't find a bad bearing, lubricated it again, and next cycle they found the temperature had gone up again. So, but there was a second sensor at the bottom of the motor which actually showed even a higher elevation of temperature. And after investigation, what they found was that the bearing was actually over lubricated. And because of that, it was dripping through down to the bottom of the motor, causing basically it was burning and elevating the temperature of the motor. Well, through regular maintenance, you wouldn't have found that, and it would have probably been catastrophic because either there would have been a fire in the motor, or B, the bearing would have failed, taking down the assembly line for a long period of time. So with IoT enablement and the data, they were able to actually prevent that issue and go back and lubricate the bearing properly and clean the whole area so that the stoppage was a lot shorter. So those are a couple of examples of how IoT and digital supply chain can enable Industry 4.0. But really, it's not just that. You think about going further into how your customers are using the products and how Industry 4.0 can improve that. One good example of that is the data coming through dry batteries. Several of the battery manufacturers are actually collecting the data from the lithium batteries that are used and figuring out how to improve the battery performance, including the temperature, including the load, including the charging. So you can actually go all the way to your customer use and collect the information. But the common thread across all of these is getting the data, having the connectivity end-to-end from your supply chain, and not just your supply chain, but your suppliers and your customers, so that you can harness the power through analytics and predictive and prescriptive analytics even. So those are some of the concepts that we look at. There are other things that I'll quickly touch upon. Optimization of production of your customers. So how are your customers using the products that you're producing? So those are some of the elements of the framework. We are seeing adoption across the industries in automotive and industrial products, which has a lot of similar characteristics to automotive. We are seeing adoption in different areas. So let me talk about some of the use cases. Real-time monitoring and loss management. This is pretty well, I'll say, adopted across the industries. And we're seeing the biggest traction in here, where you can have data coming in from the suppliers' production lines, from your own production lines, to look through what's your end-to-end productivity. Where are the bottlenecks? Where are the stoppages? Where are some gaps? And how can you then start to look at those gaps? You may have enhanced certain parts of the production line, but then there are others that theoretically should have been operating at capacity but are not. And takt times and cycle times may be getting impacted. So, we are seeing a lot of adoption of the real-time monitoring and alerts. And the concept here is really setting up a control tower, and the control tower monitoring your end-to-end production, and then figuring out really quickly intraday, not just multi-day, but intraday, how to adapt and how to make changes so you can streamline the production and optimize the OEE. The second area I touched upon and I gave example of was the intelligent sensors and smart sensors. And also what that does is enables machine-to-machine communication. So that's a great example. Another cool one, which we're starting to see a lot of use cases, a lot of proof of concepts, is around augmented reality. Think of examples where a user doesn't do the assembly very frequently. For example, assembling and disassembling tooling. Those are fairly complex and challenging tasks. So use of augmented reality to support and enable those tasks really improves the quality and the productivity. So we are seeing a lot of interest and adoption around those. Additive manufacturing, we talked about it, moved on from all the way from early resins to now even metals, not just for low to medium value parts, but also for service parts, which where you don't have to manage the tooling and the dies and so on and so forth. You can really recreate the service parts through additive manufacturing. And finally, autonomous vehicles and robotics across the plants. We're seeing significant use of that. So why is this important? why would you want to enable some of these technologies or embark on these proof of concept? There are lots of demands. Specifically as we look at the industry, there are a lot of challenges, and actually Tom mentioned electrification. We've seen all the announcements this week even and last month, and then Daniel mentioned data and technology, even security being an issue. So you have demand on your resources across the enterprise. So why should you focus on enabling some of the Industry 4.0? The real reason is it drives a lot of efficiency and productivity gains, not just from a cost perspective, but also from a quality and flexibility perspective. So let's talk about a couple of those. Smart connected production, if you can drive the OEE end to end, that's going to really have a significant impact on your CapEx, on your operating expenses, as well as your utilization of your assets. Augmented reality clearly helps users work through tasks that they don't do very often or are fairly complex, and improves the quality. We've actually seen application of augmented reality in disassembly and service of aircraft engines as well, which is a very challenging service. Digital product log. Imagine if you could track each part, have an image of each part, and if there was ever an issue on a product, instead of having a campaign on 100,000 parts and products and vehicles, you could pinpoint which exact batch, which exact product had an issue in production through tolerances or whatever the case was, not having center lines. Then you could actually target a very specific small group of products rather than having large, expansive campaigns. So digital product log has a huge impact on managing quality, but also cost. And then monitoring and control, I'll touch upon that one. Setting up digital control towers that manage the performance across your supply chain can have impact not just on your supply chain, but the customer experience and also how you work with the supplier. If you're going to have a delayed shipment and you get that data through your incoming transport, you can actually intraday adjust your production and then also actually inform the customer that there is going to be a change in the delivery. So having that control tower and the data layer talking within your enterprise and across the enterprise, that's really the magic in there. So how would someone go about embarking on this Industry 4.0 journey? We've seen a lot of instances of proof of concepts and pilots, but what we are not seeing as much is a cohesive approach to going about Industry 4.0. So what we typically recommend and what we feel is the best practice is really starting with an initial assessment. Identify where some of the opportunities are, some of the biggest gaps are in your manufacturing process, in how you collaborate with the suppliers, how you collaborate with your customers. Identify end to end, and based on that, come up with a roadmap which is driven by value and benefits realization, because that's really, if you can start to see the benefits and you can start to see the value, you will get a lot more people on board and on the bus. And once you've determined that roadmap, then it's a systematic proof of concepts and pilots. And the idea here is fail fast. If it doesn't work, let's shelve it, move on to the next one. Let's not hold on to a concept that doesn't work. So fail fast and move on to the ones that work, and invest your energy in the proof of concepts and pilots that do work. And from there, it's really a large-scale deployment. Once you've demonstrated that a proof of concept work, for example, if it's an RFID on your inbound transportation and you've tested it at a couple of dock doors and you've seen that it works, then well, let's deploy it nationally and globally. So that's how we typically would recommend companies go about embarking their journey on Industry 4.0. And as we see next 10 years and next 15 years, we're seeing a lot of change coming, a lot faster than we expected. from the perspective of electrification, from the perspective of autonomy, autonomous vehicles, from the perspective of mobility, just the concept of shared use of vehicles, that's really going to change, the products. Not just will the powertrain become a lot fewer components from 1,500 to 50 components, and also coming from different supply bases altogether, perhaps, but also what the products look like. So if the car is going to get used 55% of the time instead of 5% of the time, well, the interiors are going to look different. The requirements from wheels and tires is going to be different. So we anticipate significant changes in the supply chain and the logistics and the whole manufacturing process as well. So we believe that's the smart approach is to come up with do an assessment, come up with a roadmap, and go after targeted areas that drive benefits and value to the organization. So, but it's an exciting future. Digital supply chain, IoT are here to stay. So excited to answer any questions we have after we finish the panel. So let me turn it over to Guillaume.
Good morning. So I don't know if you got that. My name is Guillaume. So that's definitely not from southern US. So I'm a bit more Western Europe actually. So Guillaume Quentin from Nissan, senior manager in charge of finished vehicle logistics, strategy and quality. So a lot of great ideas in these slides. I'm going to speak a bit more about what we do in Nissan, what we look at doing as well. And if I could get my first slide, that would be good. Backstage, can I get my first slide? Because I can't speak for E and Y. Sorry. But just bear with me and keep training on your French accent understanding because you're going to need that for the next 10 minutes. It's coming. It's like good food. You have to wait for it. All right, here we go. Please, got everybody wake up. And to start with, to speak about this path to 4.0, I guess we are definitely in the changing world. And that's why you guys are sitting here to discuss those change. And we've got a nice video made in Nissan, actually in Renault and Nissan for the Alliance. So wanted to start with this one. Click play on video. No? Go back. There we go. All right, I'm done. No. So definitely new opportunities within the Alliance Renault-Nissan, within the automotive industry. For us, in terms of product, we are definitely preparing the future of customers. We are focusing on electric vehicles, connected vehicles, mobility services, autonomous driving. But obviously, I'm not an engineer guy, at least not from that side of the product side. So autonomous drive, connected services, definitely not an expert. The challenge for us as logistics is what do we take from that? How do we get prepared? Obviously, there's some change coming. So, what's the future for logistics? And I made that picture kind of. So is that self-driving cars to customers? When you're in finished vehicle logistics, that would avoid a lot of issues, maybe create some other ones. I don't know. So far it's still a bit far away, but we're definitely working on it. I guess the challenge is to recognize that it's coming, to get ready as executive of companies, automotive industry. We need to make sure as well that we are enabling it and we're not roadblock for it. So that's really the type of mindset, the type of tools that we have to give our teams to be able to go for change. I just use that Gartner. Gartner is doing rankings on different functions. And when you look at this ranking and the scores, actually there's no, in the supply chain ranking, there's no OEM above a score of 3, which means that you've got BMW on that picture, which is actually below 3. So I don't know what it means. I don't know what it means for you guys. I don't know if it means that either the automotive industry is outdated. I don't think we are. Either we've got bad supply chain. Could be a feeling that some guys might have. Could be a feeling that the millennials might have as well. But we need to change that type of mindset to attract talents as well. And we are working with all those companies and most of the companies we see on those pictures. So we're definitely not out of the game typically. But obviously there's a lot to do still. A lot of discussions. We're definitely speaking about RFID, connectivity. The cars go through a journey from the plant, through the logistics of the delivery, through the dealers, through the customer. So there's a lot of interest. We've got a lot of contacts, people contacting us around those items because there's a lot of value probably around it. There's a lot of challenges as well around it. Really internally within Nissan, in our organizations, the questions, and when we look at logistics is, okay, what's the right technology and what's the right business need as well? We've got a tendency to say we've optimized, we've done Kaizen, our processes are robust, which they are. So when you're bringing the additional technology, how do you make the switch from your current technology to the next one? And how do you decide to go for it? And that's not always really easy. That's not an easy one. So how do we get from today, and you can look at today like being today or just yesterday, to tomorrow? I'm pretty sure that the left side of the slide is still familiar for some of you. Those mainframe screens. We've got a couple of guys or hundreds of guys in our plants still using those. Our best friends, your best friends might be Excel as well. So that's the left side of the picture. But how do we move to digital office, digital yard, digital delivery? How do we have tools, modern tools, web-based tools, live with alerts in our offices, help the analysts take decisions? Digital yards, how do we have, no transaction, no paper, or automated transaction, paperless transactions, instructions getting to people wireless, and digital delivery as well, tracking of the cars, back to the connectivity journey. A lot of questions around that, but that's definitely where we need to go. How do we move from Excel is our best friend to some more modern tools and analytics around that? It's always a challenge. In logistics, in automotive, you've got guys and management potentially challenging you. When I order my toys or whatever goodies you want on Amazon or FedEx, I can see where my shipment is from start to finish. So why are you guys not able to do that for customers, basically? And it takes a lot, and that's a paradigm shift as well. So that's where we are. in Nissan, we're definitely reinforcing data capture, data analytics, data control, control tower type of approach, testing electronic confirmation, paperless confirmation, RFID, come back to that as well, Internet of Things, and looking, okay, what's next? Telematics, driverless vehicles, 3D printing, new delivery services. That might just be for Amazon to use drones to deliver parts, but definitely we might not use that for deliver finished vehicle product, but service parts could be one of them as well. So we're looking at those technologies and trying to think outside of the box. I guess it's probably key to make sure that we're engaging on that journey actively. And what's key as well is that what you see at the bottom, and we see it, and we've started to kind of change a bit some approach on some projects, is a continuous journey with partners. Partners could be internal or external, and you can see external. Obviously, we've got suppliers in this room, so you've got external partners, and we need to get better at that. But internal is as well a challenge. We've got disconnected systems, functions with sometimes some silo approach, some one-side-centric KPI. So how do we get through that to get better integrated as well? It's kind of why we're doing that. I use that picture. I like this picture. I don't know if you remember Waldo. Obviously, I've never learned Waldo. We use Charlie in Europe. But Waldo is this little guy on a busy picture. And for logistics guys, it's always about finding this car or finding this piece that we need for the production line. And how do we get this track and trace traceability, basically? So that's a picture of a project that we are doing in Mississippi. And using GPS and RFID technology to be able to track the cars through the delivery journey, or at least the yard management journey. So that's new, that kind of a new approach. That's a new approach for our process. That's a new approach in the way we manage projects in terms of integration from design up through manufacturing, through supply chain as well, to get to that technology, and to get the management as well to support it, because you want a kind of a shift of mindset and giving you a chance to try, make something different, and give you the freedom to do it. So that's one of the kind of the last slide I would like to focus on. Basically, mostly it's how do we get there? So 3 pillars for me is definitely data. How do we capture data? How do we get better at data? How do we get our journey kicked off with data science? And I see probably you look at IPO on that slide. So IPO, if you don't know what that is, it's probably one of you guys, or most of you guys actually. It's the highest paid person opinion. So you don't want to be that highest paid person giving its opinion rather than basing his decisions on data. So you want to enable your teams to have the right tools, have the right data, be able to bring you to the right decision, or to make your life easy, basically, because the data are so good that the decision is obvious. But it takes some collaboration as well. So collaboration internally, externally. We are very transactional. We've got purchasing guys in the room, and we've got sales guys on the other side, or trying to make a transaction. How do we move from this transaction approach to more partnership approach? How do we create value by giving up, basically, on some information? We're speaking about data. Giving up information to create transparency, to create more trust, create partnership, create visibility as well, so that you're able to look at predictive actions rather than reactive actions. The famous bullwhip effect, butterfly effect, are some of the syndromes of disconnected systems and low-level collaboration. And definitely, people. How do we engage them, attract them? We've got a session later today on millennials. How do we get those guys interested by the automotive world, by the factory, by the supply chain? How do we get all guys internally who are in the mindset of, we've always done that this way, So how do we get those guys engaged as there's another way, there's a new way, there's a different way? It's potentially better, it's easier, but at least we need to try. So there's a lot into the mindset. But I think there's no magic recipe, so that was just my speech to it. You take there's a long path basically, and this illustration of Thomas Edison's code is really good. I did not fail 1,000 times, but the light bulb was an invention with 1,000 steps. And sometimes on some projects, you're like that. You need to give the freedom of failure to your teams, because they might want to try something. They might want to succeed into it. And if at the first milestone, you're basically like, oh, where do you stand? What's your countermeasure? When do you get to it? Why do you fail? And so on. Then you're killing innovation. So that's really one of the challenges we've got for our own management mindset, and to be able to embrace this transformation. And just enjoy the journey. And that's all I have so far, and we'll answer questions after the speech of Mr. Bill Wappler from Surgear.
Probably don't want to throw that, do I? Nice, I got it. Yeah, thank you. Morning, everybody. While they're moving my slides into position, I'd like to kind of catch up a little bit and perhaps let everybody know what my job is today, because it's fairly simple. I only have one thing to do, and that is to send you home with maybe 2 or 3 things that you can begin doing tomorrow that will align you with what we see the industry doing as a whole. So let's, if I may, give you a little bit of a story and a background while we take a deep breath. Let's just listen to our Apple Watches, breathe deep, and let's start considering what's happening around us just a little bit. But before I do that, I want to make a call out to Monica, who's on stage. Who here has met Monica in the past? Anyone at all? One. Monica represents an incredible organization. Iridescent is all about helping the technology sector bring in a diversified group of people that are very underrepresented, which is the young female population in the United States. Everybody that I see in here that are friends and clients, every time we have coffee together, the concern is constantly, where do we find people? Where do we find people? We're having such a hard time. And we have someone on stage that is all about an organization that is bringing more and more young people into technology. Please, before you leave, make sure that you get to know Monica. The one thing that you ought to ask her, though, is why she's only the 7th strongest woman in the United States, which she is, by the way. She's a pretty powerful lady. I think, when are you in Vegas? November 11th are the new finals for powerlifting and things for young women. She better be in the top 3, right? She's awesome. So get to know her a little bit before you go home. I want to tell you a brief story, if I may, about what I've been up to from the beginning, and then I'll take you into what I'm seeing. We started Surgear at my kitchen table some years ago, and I thought I had the best job in the world, right? Came out of grad school, thought I was really smart, had a little bit of money in the bank, thought, let's go start a company. It's a great experience. It has to be in your DNA. There's a ton of risk involved, but it's a great thing. And then my job title changed because we thought that we would find a few small companies and go to work, right? Well, the first client was a Timken company, then it was Alcoa, then it was Ford, then it was Best Buy, and it just kind of took off, right? Then I thought I had the best job in the world because I got to go visit with all of these clients, talk about their business, and I would quite literally participate on the project committees. That was an awesome time. As we started growing, though, my job title changed one more time, and that was to ensure accelerated development. And those of you that play in the technology space know that you don't develop as a car cycle every 5 years. You develop on a monthly basis. And my job title really changed at that point But then as I look out, I see a lot of, as I said, our friends and clients, as 6 of the US OEMs have selected us to help them through their digitalization process, and a fairly high number of their tiers. My job title now is radically different. What I do now is I sit in front of executive committees and board of directors around the world and help them uncover a strategy that's going to take them through the digitalization process. So today what I've done is I've prepared, if you will, a condensed summary of that. I'll share it with you, and then you can go home and hopefully you can align with what we are clearly seeing as a pathway. So here we go. What is it, right? I used to give speeches every year about it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Guess what? It's not coming anymore, it's here. 4.0 is quite literally the 4th generation of manufacturing. And it has a root in its foundation from Europe, where the reality became very understood that global economics will not support the number of people on the planet anymore. I mean, think about that. That's kind of an awakening if there's ever been one. So what's happening as a result? What's happening is that manufacturing, its very essence is changing, right? So what are we going to see? We're going to see more robots. We're going to see a great deal more 3D printing. We're going to start seeing localized manufacturing, not distant manufacturing of very large plants. All those things are happening. If you talk to Boeing and everyone else, you're starting to get a sense of that happening already, right? This 4th generation is going to deliver these types of I think, very reasonable expectations, most of which will increase your productivity at the plant level by 1/3. Think about that. We all go home, we all sit on committees, we search for small percentages of cost savings or efficiency gains every year. And we have something that's coming to us that's going to increase our effectiveness at the manufacturing level by over 30%. It's crazy, and it's happening right now. That's why everybody is embracing it, and we're all moving to it. So, what is causing this? And why is it happening? Well, thank you to the gamers and a lot of people that were making a lot of devices that fit into other devices, where they're your refrigerator, you open the door, it'll tell you what's there, what you've used, what you need to buy. All of those folks that have created sensors have now been embraced by manufacturing. We're deploying those sensors across the manufacturing floor. Folks like us are deploying them across the entire supply chain. And what that's doing is it's giving us the interconnectivity that we're all looking for to be able to get past what Guillaume was talking about, which is the bullwhip effect, right? But what's the current state? Well, we're falling short. What's really happening is that we're still siloed. Mr. Keith Oliver, if those of you have read some of his books and things, when he was with Booz Allen in 1982, he created the term supply chain management. 82. The vision was that we would all work in harmony. OEM would make a move, Tier 1 would adjust, Tier 2 would adjust, Tier 3 would adjust, because we would all see what we're all doing. Anybody have that kind of a supply chain going on? It's very rough at best. Most of the time what we see is that it's not working at all. And the reason is that we don't share information. The Internet of Things is going to fix that for us, and that's why it's coming so quickly. This is a historical time in the lives of manufacturing folks. And it's historic because it's the first time that we've ever had sensors and technology that will allow us to, in fact, deliver what Keith Oliver suggested, which is we all see what's happening, we all adjust, and we act as one. That's what it's all about. Well, what's the downside if we don't get there? And everybody knows this. We have a client, they said it very specifically, and the reality is this: accountability without data just sucks. You go into a meeting and they go, hey, what happened here? Well, what's the planning exercise? Well, we're using LlamaSoft. We're making plans of what we're going to manufacture and how we're going to distribute goods, but it's all assumptive data. We're living in assumptions. And they're right. Accountability just sucks without data. So here's the pathway, and I'm going to go through this very quickly. This is what we're providing to the executive committees of the OEMs and folks around the world in a very brief snapshot. Here's the picture. You start with your supply chain, and you will all, by the way, be part of this. And I would suggest that you start preparing, because there are digital, and I wish that Chris Barkley could have been here from General Motors. He could have shared some of what they're doing. We can share what Honda's doing, Nissan. All of the folks already have digital transformation committees in place. They're moving along, and this is happening. So prepare. You're already part of it. You may not know it. The picture's pretty simple. Everyone is deploying a plan around what their supply chain actually looks like. They're mapping it in very deep detail. Second thing they're doing is they're following an order. An order to you and I is not a purchase order. An order is a demand signal. You know, in the old days, we used to call them demand signals. I need 5, great, I've got 4, I'm gonna send you 4, I owe you 1, back and forth, right? We all know what a demand signal is. First step is lay it out, deeply understand it, follow the demand signal. Next step is follow the theory of constraints. And again, this is happening. That's why, and there's plenty of technology companies in the back that can talk to you about this, but the fact of the matter is what's really happening under the covers, you're hearing about project after project after project that's taking place. Well, it's taking place because people are now starting to understand, where am I constrained? Why am I not accomplishing the smooth transition and transportation of parts? Well, let's look at the theory of constraints. We all read Goldratt in school, right? Then let's lay over a number of projects. Let's start then after that to layer all types of different technologies. In the back, again, you'll be able to see RFID, robotics, a lot of different things. There's not one technology. There's a lot that are going to be in play for you. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to look at then deploying that, but not only deploying it to all of your particular projects, you're going to deploy it to all of the people that exist within your supply chain. We have one OEM that has determined that to be a certified supplier, you will in fact participate in this. There are 2 more coming on board. Think about that. So now we've laid, now look at the data relationships. We have all of the technology in place. The next piece will be, where's all the data? What does it mean? And how do I use it? It starts tactically. Am I sending things on time? Do I have enough? Do they have enough? Where's everything that I need to reduce my asset inventory, increase my effectiveness, and do better business? You can only do it with tactical data first. Then you do predictive data. How do I even optimize what I know to be real? Then what you do is you start using self-learning. You know, we all talk about big data. There's a professor at Northwestern that would suggest that big data is the universe of knowledge about one thing. We're a bit away from big data, but we are starting self-learning and higher level artificial intelligence within the supply chain. Again, it's happening today, and you'll be affected by it pretty quickly. Once you've done that, you'll literally have a very brief and easy picture. And I would predict this, and I'll tell you what we're working on. Your future in your commercial enterprise will look just like your picture at your house. You will be able to pull out your phone, just like we all do, and Amazon or UPS or Parcel Post or whoever it might be will have sent you an update on your phone that says, we're going to deliver your package that you ordered, and it's going to be at your house by 2 p.m., and you can see that it hit Toledo, hit Pittsburgh's on its way to Ohio, here you go. Your commercial lives will be exactly like that. And it's going to be like that because of the technology that we've been talking about so far this morning. So our prediction and what we're seeing and what our clients are building are very easy and simple dashboards, much like this. I made this up for you, but it's not dissimilar to what's being built. And what it's happening is that their supply chains are working under a self-learning, higher order data analytics level that is producing to them what they can expect to see. We have a problem between a supplier and ourselves. We have a bigger problem between ourselves and an outbound distribution. That's all that they're going to see, folks. And if they want to know more, then they're going to start delivering deeper messages, just like your phone. You want to see that it's coming from Amazon, you push the button, it'll tell you exactly where it is and if it's been delivered or not. That's the way our commercial lives will be. That's what people are building today. When problems are solved, it goes back green, people are walking down the hall, everybody's happy. Can you imagine that life? Think about how we're managing our business today. Most of our clients are still working in Excel spreadsheets. We're trading messages back and forth that are, at best, dead data, if not old data. And here's the other reason why you should consider getting on board right away. And I will give you this piece behind the data. And that is that these are early predictors from the data that we've gathered from all of our OEM clients. And we're tracking at a meta level what predictive performance improvement looks like for the industry. This is early yet, okay? So let's not put concrete over this because it's early data. And the sample size is large, but I'm not quite ready to say this is done. What we're seeing is that we're seeing performance improvement on average of 13.8% across the board. Anybody have that kind of performance improvement last year? No, nobody. But we're starting to see it as a result of 4.0 deployment and digitalization. The next thing that we're seeing is that they have an overall cost reduction of 22.4%. That's incredible. We should be running as fast as we can to that target. So here's the approach, and I'll go through this quick. You want to get there? First of all, start with sensor level data collection. It's the only way to do it. Start learning as much as you can, as quickly as you can. Layer some technologies. Start looking at analytics. Look at metadata, as we do. And then overlay artificial intelligence so it can be self-running for you in the future. That's your approach. Here's what we'll tell you that we've learned also on what works and what fails. And maybe you can take a look at this on another day. But if you ever want to really focus on one thing that'll get you home, it's this slide. As an example, clearly if you're going to be successful, you have to have organizational-wide ownership. And all of us who live in the automotive industry can talk over and over and over again about innovative ideas that were plugged in. Everybody was excited. No one was really in charge. And then everybody started doing their daily job, and it just went away. You will not get to where we were talking to unless you can have organizational-wide responsibility and KPIs for 4.0. We work with an organization, Electrolux, many of you know and perhaps use their product. One of the things they did is when they launched their digital transformation committee, the board of directors set aside a tremendous amount of money specifically to be able to innovate, fail, so that they could get through this. You might want to start studying some of those companies as well. So take a look at this. And then my suggestion again is meet a few folks out in the innovation zone and see where everyone's going. But don't leave till you get to meet this lady. Thank you so much. So since I dropped my microphone, I have to stand still, right? I understand we have about 5 minutes for questions for anyone on the panel, and maybe I can facilitate from here. Anyone have a question from Sven or maybe Guillaume? And you can even ask the question in French. Sir. In French? 9.
As a supplier, it seems like one of our biggest challenges is the transfer of information between the supplier, the manufacturer. It seems like everybody is protective of their information. There's not that free flow. So as a supplier, how do I know when you need something if we can't see your ERP system to know that something's gone?
Is that working? Yeah. Yeah. And that's definitely, that's what I highlighted, means we are still there. We are still with systems which are not really capable of that as well. So you're still relying on, the inventory control process, giving you your plans for 6 months and then your firm forecast for the next 4 weeks or something like that. And, that's I'm not saying I've got the magic recipe for you today, but we have to embrace that change. And that's what we start to look at, how do we approach that? One of the big challenges that the systems are not today set up to do it. So what does it mean for us? And that's a collaborative work. That means for you, and that's the same, I guess, with your tier 2, tier 3, and so on. But how do we engage on that journey collectively? Because we are in a very traditional approach, and we take the system we have, and we're in a traditional commercial approach, I guess. That's out of my scope, but yeah, we've got to engage on that journey. But that's a collaborative move from both sides, probably, not just us. So.
Thank you for taking my call, my question. The visibility in the end-to-end visibility in the supply chain is a big challenge. I understand there are a lot of technologies out there. But the transportation and the supply chain, when it comes to interaction between different elements, different parties in this, is not there. This is an extension of earlier question. So what kind of solutions do you propose that can fill this gap very quickly? Because we are kind of way behind in this role.
That's for you.
If I can jump into that just a moment, because there are a few things going on right now that I think that importantly answer that question. First of all, AIAG, and most everyone here, I hope, are members of AIAG, if not pretty busy within one of the subgroups. AIAG has formed a committee that feels a little bit like EDI, right? Where there's a commonality of structure, and that all the data elements will then fit in a common framework across both OEMs and their tier suppliers and distribution channels. So that way, once you have commonality, then you can share data. Everyone will move from, as a matter of fact, there's another group that's forming of OEMs and their tiers to talk about what data, what form is the data, how do we share it, and it takes that whole trust bond away where everybody's wondering if we're playing no-peek poker, right? I'm only going to tell you what I want to tell you, and all of that will change when data is being collected and it's being shared. And those groups are working today in building that common framework. Once that's done, then I think this accelerates. But follow AIAG closely. It's a big change. It's historic. If I can use my friend from Honda's word, it's a historic change in the supply chain.
I think just to add to that, I think from a driving success perspective, we ought to start more with the objective. I think there are different technologies that can enable the data transfer, but I think if you get you identify the objectives and get both the parties, yourself and your customer, aligned on what's the value proposition of doing that. That's what we see as a bigger challenge in enabling success and driving behavioral change. That's a bigger hurdle in our perspective than the actual enabling technology in itself.
All right, how about a round of applause for our panel today? Thank you all for joining. So if you check out the Innovation Zone to your right and the purple sign, it's hosted by Surgair, and they have a very cool robot named Robbie, and he's doing some interesting things. So please make your way over there, and thank you for joining us today.